democratic space. It was the only free space then. We couldn't even dream of meeting and having discussions in the university because the police was very brutal. It was not even like these days. But yeah, so that was just I won't take much, but it was just some of the memories that arose in me. Then also to correct a little, I'm not a member of the International Socialist Organization. I was a member of the International Socialist Organization for much of my student days, but I'm now a member of what is known as the Communist Movement of Zimbabwe. And also, just to divulge a little secret, we are also part of a group of former student activists, student leaders, young workers. We have decided to come together early this year. We have decided to come together and to work towards coming up with a political alternative for our nation, a youthful, a radical political alternative that's fight for economic freedom. I'm sure in the coming days you'll be hearing about that, but it's not why we are here. This is not a political rally for my agenda. I'm here as the former student leader, so I will talk about this. But I'm also here as someone. We all heard about the Fees Must Fall campaign, the movements, the protests, whatever, the violence and everything that was taking place in South Africa. And that is the reason why we are gathered here to discuss and to analyze what was taking place in South Africa and whether it's relevant for our nation as Zimbabweans. Like President Dombo was saying, that agenda is a South African agenda. It shouldn't be part of it shouldn't be an issue here in Zimbabwe because we are Zimbabweans, because we are South Africans. But comrades, there's one thing that is called solidarity. We must, wherever we are, if we are student activists, if we are student leaders, and even when you leave the students and when you become maybe labor activists, trade activists, or even community activists, you should never forget the word called solidarity. Solidarity, what it necessarily means is that I may be coming from Zimbabwe myself, but it doesn't mean that if we were to name names, I and Chiango, because we are both Zimbabweans, doesn't mean we have the same interests. I'm more comfortable, I have more interest with someone who comes from South Africa who is failing to pay fees than I have with a fellow Zimbabwean who lives in Borodeo Group. And also someone in South Africa who is failing to pay fees, who is going to the streets every day. They have more in common with someone from outside South Africa than they have with a man like Cyril Ramaphosa, the current vice president of South Africa, who led 34 more mine workers to be shot in 2012 at Marikana, if you remember the incident. So the issue of solidarity is very important, Comrade President. It's not about you being at the University of Zimbabwe and then there was that saying that used to circulate that there's only one university in Zimbabwe, some are just faculties. You know, that's where we lose it. Because the issue of solidarity is that we should have common interests. When we have common interests, it's no longer matters whether we are from beyond borders, whether we are from beyond tribes or even from different continents. What should bring us together and what I will really be happy if it's the single most important lesson that we learn from this night. It is the issue of solidarity. We must always show solidarity, be it for fellow students, even from beyond our borders, be it for the workers, be it for the vendors. If you are a genuine student activist, you should be concerned whenever you see vendors' babies being run over by cars, maybe from the municipal police. You should be concerned whenever you see houses being bashed down by bulldozers, so that at the end of the day, families, unemployed families, have to sleep at night. That's the issue of solidarity. So for myself, maybe that's the reason why I was called to this meeting. I did went to South Africa during the Fees Must Fall campaign. And maybe I should share this. It's an article that I wrote for Neanda Radio. After maybe you can share just one more. Yeah. So that you may read after the meeting what I felt about the Fees Must Fall campaign. I went to South Africa. And I went to this university. I met with the student leaders there. I met with the people who were organizing the Fees Must Fall campaign in South Africa. And from our engagement, because the night that I went to South Africa, they had an all-night meeting in their students' union. It's so much different from what we do here in Zimbabwe. They were highly organized. This is another issue besides the issue of solidarity that I want to talk about. They were highly organized, and I feel when I was sharing with some of the comrades here whom we constantly had discussions with, I was telling them about the level of organization that was being exercised by the South African students and the issue of unity. It was not about whether, because in South Africa, you find out we have the EFF Students' Command, you have the ANC Youth League, all those are interested parties when it comes to SRC elections. And they actually fight over each other, very violent. But during the Fees Must Fall campaign, which started at Fees Invest in Johannesburg, they got together and they became united. On coming to the Wits University, their senators, where they were meeting, you would see people from EFF, people from NCA, people from Democratic Alliance, cooking news together, sharing news together in brotherhood, in comradeship, coming together, the communication team made up of different parties. It was not about parties when it came to an issue that was affecting the majority of them and the majority of their fellow students from around the nation. It was the issue of solidarity, which is the issue that must really be an important issue for us around here, Comrade President. Yeah, I'm going back to him because what he said really touched me. The issue about the fees must focus on being a South African issue. So when I went to South Africa, I had discussions with South African comrades. And from the discussions, what I was really happy about was that the following day, there was a declaration for for those of you who managed to see it, or those of you who are in our Zinfis Master 4 WhatsApp group. There was a declaration which I shared, which came from Wits University. And you know what they said in that declaration? One of the points in that declaration was that students who come from Africa but who are not South Africans must not be made to pay higher fees than South African students. They didn't even say we don't care about Zimbabwean students in South Africa, we don't care about Mozambican students in South Africa. It was one of their demands at Wits University. They said the students from Africa who study in South Africa, they must not be made to pay higher fees, because this is that was the regime at the moment. Students in South Africa, they pay some fees, then students from SADC, they pay a bit higher, students from Africa pay a bit higher, then international students pay the highest fees. So they say students from Africa should not be made to pay higher fees. And secondly, there was the issue of what they call international levies, which means if you are an international student, besides the top fees that you pay, you also have to pay an international levy, regardless of whether you pay the higher fees or not. So, you know, the issue of solidarity was there amongst the South African students. Even when I went there, they actually treated me with much more respect than I even expected to be treated by them. Just hearing that I'm coming from Zimbabwe, and I've taken some time to go there, because I was in South Africa on some work-related issues. But I took some time to say, no, this is the evening. Instead of going to drink with people, let me go visit the students as a former student leader. Let me see how organized they are, so that I also come back and share with the current student leadership. And indeed, I came back. When I came back, I met with the student leaders, the former student leaders. And some obviously we couldn't meet people like President Obo, but we said, no, this is the technological era. We created a WhatsApp group, a Zinfis Master 4 group, and we added all the comrades like from, actually, I thought of my shoes, no, we are not interested in this. Sister, living. Alright. Which brings me to my last point, the issue of gender, comrades. I think for us to be really organized, we also need to greatly involve female students. If you were following the Fees Master 4 campaigns in South Africa, the leadership, the real leaders of the Fees Master 4 campaign at Wits University, the outgoing SRC president is a lady, an Indian lady. Her name is Shaira. I met her. Then the incoming president, we're supposed to take over, who was also leading. She's called Nompendulo. She's also a lady. That's how gender sensitive they are. The outgoing president, the most militant university in South Africa, is a female. And the incoming president is also a female. So it's also really important that we must utilize the issue of gender. So those are some of the issues that I thought I should say. That is, the student leaders, one, we should always inculcate the issue of solidarity. We must always involve the issue of solidarity amongst ourselves. We must also be highly organized. And we must try at all means to run away from, there's this issue, the unionist mentality that says, the fact that you are a student or as a student leader, you must merely be concerned about issues that affect the students. But what you forget is that as students, we don't live in a vacuum. We are part of society. The questions that are happening in society, the great questions that take place in society should also be of great concern to us as students. Because we are part of that society, we don't live in a vacuum. The fact that you have got into UZ, you have got into a lecture room, doesn't mean you are no longer part of Zimbabwe. So, comrades, it's not just about student issues. It's also about what is happening in society. That's why I'm saying, whenever we problem, I just hope that in the future, because there's less time for us to discuss, but in the future, we should also be able to constantly meet. I think my contact is now. We should also be constantly able to meet, not just discussing about students, but also discussing, because there are other people out there in society, our parents, the unemployed, etc., who do not have the intellect or who do not have the time to come and meet and discuss the questions that affect them in society. But we do have the time, and let's take responsibility. That's the last point. Let's take responsibility as students. Let's take responsibility to be part of the questions that determine our society. Let's take responsibility to add our voice in economic problems, in political problems, in social problems that take place in our societies. That's why some of us dedicated themselves to become activists. Because sometimes people come to you and say, when I was posting on Facebook that this is what is happening in South Africa, in Zimbabwe we must also do the same. Some people were saying, you left university in 2013. Why are you still concerned about the students' issues? Why should you just be concerned about labor issues? And I say, no, that's not the issue. The issue is that we must stand in solidarity together. The issue that I am a student, I'm not a student, is neither here nor there. The issue is about us taking responsibility. If I see students at university being affected, and even if I'm at work, I must really be concerned about that, and I must be part of that struggle. The same with you. If you see vendors being affected, you must be part of that struggle. If you see other people being affected by whatever problems in society, you must be part of that. So, comrades, as the way forward, yeah. So, comrades, the issue, I just hope that the Zim fees must be for agenda. That's what we try to discuss, because we really got in touch with almost the SRC leaders from across Zimbabwe. But the response was really disappointing. It was a great disappointment, especially from most of the current SRC leaders. It was a great disappointment. That issue of saying it's a South African issue. At the end of the day, we are going into the next semester, maybe that's January, February. We are going to be met with massive registration fees. We are going to be met with maybe fee increases. But just because we couldn't take advantage of a situation where the whole world was watching Southern Africa, it's really disappointing, especially for genuine activists and people who are genuinely concerned about the questions about what is going on in society. So, comrades, I really feel that most of you will also be part of our discussions when we talk about the Zim fees must for agenda, to see what really must be done. Because when we were actually discussing it first, we said, no, we may be different from South Africa, but our issue, if it's to be a different issue from South Africa, it's not about abandoning the fees must for agenda, but we will actually go further and say Zim fees must go, so that we fight for what? For free education, which is a demand that was one of the key demands in the students' union movement from much earlier time. So, comrades, I just feel that from this meeting, let's stand in solidarity with others. Let's take responsibility for whatever problems are happening in society. And let's stay organized. Doesn't matter about the unions that will come from NASU, ZIKOSU, etc. The most important issue is solidarity and organization. Thank you, comrades.
Thank you very much. In the interest of part of us via our online platform, WebEx, they are also commenting as we proceed. So with Lenin Chisayra there, I think you heard it from him who was on the ground, is critically unpicking issues of organization. Which is also very crucial, which was also a part which Kwisai was supposed to address on the history of student activism, the participation of students, the closure of the SU building before their time, and how they reopened it under the leadership of Agency Kumbo and Lenin, the Vice President. Also, thank you very much. So also talking about issues of militants, how universities become the hub of a revolutionary vanguard in fighting for socio-political issues affecting society, which is also a fundamental thing that we got there. And also his response towards the passivity of SRC leadership and the lack of commitment towards revolutionary agendas, which he himself thinks they should be participating in. Our last speaker is Comrade Pride in Kono, former Zinaso president. I'm sure some of you know him. He's a writer and an orator, a revolutionary. He was expelled from the USA. He's a man who I have high respect of as a person. He participated so much in this struggle. Comrade President, you can take the podium. Thank you.
How are my comrades? How are my comrades? I always find it quite difficult to speak last because most of the things we want to say would have been said. But I think I would want to acknowledge maybe a point that Comrade Sarah raised, which is quite crucial to me, when he said it is not always, and it is not every group in society that is able to sit down like this and talk. The only other group that I know in Zimbabwe, at least, are politicians, you see. But these ones now do it at a very great price to the nation. They are paid huge amounts of money, allowance in parliament, they are paid allowance in cabinet to sit down. And after sitting down, do you know what they discuss? They discuss that we must raise fees. They come up with communiques to put prepaid water meters. They come up with communiques to fire your parents from jobs. That's what they do after hours of discussions. So for young people of our age to sit down here and discuss progressive things and ask ourselves fundamental questions of the day is not just a revolutionary act. It is an act of solidarity. It is an act of empathy. Firstly with ourselves, and secondly with the world that we live in. So I just wanted to thank you, Comrade Shera, for raising that. And as maybe I go into my presentation, I would want to begin with a teaser. I'll quote Che Guevara. Che Guevara says, the revolution is not like an apple which falls from the tree when it is ripe. We must make it fall. We must make the evolution happen. We can't wait in our small corners and our small spaces and hope that the revolution will occur on its own. As Comrade Dombo was saying, that we have to act. I like the part that you said we must act as students. That is very fundamental. Action is the hallmark of all activism. Action is the hallmark of all fundamental progress that must be made in society. So that to me is one thing that we must do. But how then do we conceptualize the current status of this union? I heard Comrade Basoko speaking. He was very passionate about the issue to do with the SRC representation. The president came in, was also very particular to say there are issues. What is the broader picture? What is the root cause of everything that is happening in this country? If you are going to look at it broadly, basically there are 5 things that are behind the death of student activism in Zimbabwe. Don't blame it on yourself or even President Ruto. It's too small. All of us here are too small for the schemes and fights that we are faced with. But the more we understand that and the more we spend together and realize that the strength is in our numbers, the strength is in our message, the more we'll be able to then galvanize a program of action and achieve it. The first is state repression. My comrades, we live in a clear dictatorship, a tin-pot kind of dictatorship that invests massively in security. And we have all heard about the debt question. Zimbabwe needs to clear debt. Part of that debt was money used to buy my water cannon from Israel, my baton sticks, my tear gas in the 90s when the investors of Zimbabwe were protesting. During the the state invested heavily. They actually borrowed money from the international community to purchase arms of the state. And they did not stop there. They went further. They put in place laws. You all know the Investors Zimbabwe Act of 1991, which became a copycat of every other Invest Act, which gives wide-ranging disciplinary powers to the Vice Chancellor. That's why yes, he has the power to do that. He can appoint anyone, pick 0.5 people here kangaroo court and fire away at the university. They can do the same with students. They can do the same with anyone. That's the level of and now that is not the most problem. Now that's kind of the students' problem. That is a structural problem. And this is uniform across the entire country. There's the Ordinance 8 of 1984. Normally, it's written in small print when you're asked to sign it as you come into the university. In very small print. And it's amended when you don't even know whether it's amended or not. But what that piece of legislation does, which to me is probably a reminiscent of my statue in Europe, who is slavery. There's nothing, it's the most democratic probably piece of legislation in Zimbabwe. I'm not going to place in a modern democracy. And that a person claiming to be a professor can sit and say, I'm administering a university using that. It's the most absurd thing I've found. So, ordinance state automatically no pays out. Even if you do something in a beer hall, yes, if you are going you can still pursue it. No, you drink in a beer hall and then you put the name of the university to disappear. Whatever that means. The interpretation is so wide-ranging and varying, so that you don't even know that the more probably he interprets it, the more we go into it, the more he puts the name of the same university to disappear. The second and third point, probably I will tie them together, is on-campus inflation and student poverty. One of the things the state did in 1980, Zambia inherited loans and grant system as a vehicle funding from Ian Smith. But they made sure that they must gradually erode that. And it was systematic. The reason was very simple. If you don't want students who march in the streets and make all the noise, make them poor.